Warning: the Gel Blaster toy shown in this video could be mistaken for a real firearm. Do not take gel blasters into public spaces or it will likely be treated as real by authorities. Gel blasters are classified as toys in Queensland regulations, however this may be different in your state or territory. Be sure to check your local laws before buying or ordering a gel blaster. Also, ensure you use adequate eye protection whenever using gel blasters. Stay safe, everyone.
So g'day boys and girls, welcome back to the studio for another gel blaster review. This is another one of the older gel blasters, so this is the Scar V2 I'm going to do today, just cleaning up some of the ones that came out earlier before I really started getting into it, just so that way if there's something you want to get, especially as a budget option, there's a bit of information for you so you can decide whether or not it is worth your time. Now, like I mentioned, the one we're looking at today is the Scar V2. Let's just jump straight into it. Once again, I'm going to be using my little GoPro hand close-up camera mount, so let me know what you think of that down below, but we'll jump right into it. So starting at the business end, you do have this long elongated outer barrel with a little mock flashlight, very similar to the M4A1 Gen 8. So I'll just show you that one up close, just there. So that literally just slots on there. In this case it needs to be pushed all the way on, but as this is a borrowed blaster, so this has been lent to me by CQ Blasters, not mine, I have to give it back, all of that jazz. I didn't want to push that on there too much just in case it did actually break. Moving further along the front end, you do have a bit of a quad rail setup, at least until this point just here, with one on every side, but the bottom one coming all the way down to the magwell, which is nice. Top rail being a monolithic rail going all the way across. You do have this little iron sight setup which allows you to pop it up by pushing in a little button on this side. So I'll just show you that. So it'll pop down, that'll pop out. Yep, there we go, and push that in there, and that can pop up. Push it down, and it locks in place. So that's what that one is. Moving further along, you do have a little bit of detail along the side here, and on the right hand side you have some text and markings and whatnot. They're all basically a bunch of crap. Trying to imitate the look of the real thing. A little bit of texturing here, but nothing special. You do have this little connection here where it would be for a charging bolt handle. It's not connected on this one, as I mentioned, and all that usually does is pull back the dust cover slightly. Doesn't really do anything else that I can see on this particular blaster. Be nice if it was a mag prime, however, as far as I can tell on this one, it is not. So just be mindful of that. What I might do is I'll just show you on the left hand side, and I'll get the close cam for this one. If you have a look, there's a whole bunch more markings, some on the top, some on the bottom, MK16 Mod O, yada yada yada. This is the one I want to get to though, the safety. Now the safety is a fairly basic mechanical safety, so when it is sitting there in the safe position, I might see if I can put this down, like so, it physically stops the trigger from being able to come back all the way. As soon as you put it in semi or auto, it'll start firing. There is a battery in this and whatnot, so I don't want to pull that trigger indoors. But the semi-automatic sort of works. It's not too bad, but not ideal. On the other side, it is just a molding. It's even different connections, so that doesn't do anything. On the actual pistol grip, you do have this nice texturing and whatnot, which for a standard blaster is not bad at all. Something to note on this is that it is very plastic. It shows its age with how plastic it actually is, so be mindful of that. It's not at all a nylon blaster or one that I would recommend dropping or landing on, because you'll probably break it. But yeah, so that is perfectly fine. Trigger guard, as you can see just there, on the right hand side of the blaster you do have the mag release, which if you push that in, releases that latch just there. It is a little bit dicky, just be wary of that. It can be quite easy to think it's in or not in and then accidentally force it. The magazine is all plastic, same as the rest of the blaster. It is nothing special at all. It's about the same size as most M4 mags. It's not exactly the same as an M4 mag, so it doesn't necessarily cross over to everything. But yeah, already got gels in it because I've been using it. Got a couple of terminals there. It is automatic, so there is a motor in the bottom of that. Make sure you don't do a tip and water in. It's fairly standard fare on that. But yeah, it is incredibly plastic. There is absolutely nothing fancy about this thing at all. And it does open up and feed using a little door on the back, just like that. So yeah. So I know some people prefer the back door on it, giggity, but this one has one of those. To push it in, pretty straightforward, straight into the magwell, and in you go. Now, something to note, the magwell looks flared. It is not actually flared, so just be careful when you're doing that, otherwise you might run the risk of potentially breaking something. So yeah, moving on to the buttstock, because we all love a little bit of booty. Now, this thing does have the ability to collapse the buttstock by pressing this little button here. It will fold over. However, the problem is, while it does link into there, it's not real great. It's fairly solid when you're sitting like that, but it's sort of, you got to bend it to get in there, so I wouldn't necessarily rely too much on that. The other side of that, which is a Jin Ming favorite, is the battery sits in the buttstock, so there's just a wire going there, so you're just running the risk of potentially snagging that on something. I personally would run this with the stock fully closed, but that's a personal preference. Like I always say, personal preference is key. I will just quickly show you that up on the close cam while I've got it. So yeah, so your battery goes from the blast, your battery wires go from the blaster motor in there, come through that hole, go to there, and that's where the battery lives, in the buttstock. So yes, so I'll just close that up. Now the battery compartment is in the top of the buttstock, so you got to lift up this little cheek guard just here. This pin isn't in properly, that's my bad, because like I said, borrowed blaster. So you lift that up, and there's your battery compartment just there. I've already got a battery connected. This does typically come with an 11.1 volt battery as standard, so just keep that in mind. There is quite a big little bay in there. I don't know how you would go fitting the stick type or the Turnigy airsoft style batteries in there. You might be able to, because there is a bit of space at the back. However, I'll be careful on the really long ones, because I don't think they will fit, and you don't want to damage it there. But otherwise, it's actually a pretty good battery compartment. It's fairly solid, it's fairly open, so that is absolutely by no means a bad thing. Standard black JST connection, so all your standard gel gun batteries and whatnot will work on this one. The last end of the buttstock, you do have a nice little mini extension in the back. You can just activate that by pushing this in here. It is fairly stiff, but you know, if you want that little bit of extra extension, you can get it. And there is a little sling mount here, and the butt of the actual buttstock itself, it's just pretty much solid plastic, so it's not at all comfortable, but that's okay. So that's the Scar V2 in a nutshell. It's very plastic, it's old, but it does still seem to be a favorite among certain people, especially as it is pretty much still a budget option, which means it is a fairly good entry-level blaster. I never bought one and never really used one in games because it's not my favorite style. I don't like the blocky look of the Scar. I think it's too bulky, but that's a personal aesthetic choice. It's got nothing to do with actual performance. The performance on this thing seems indeed comparable to some of the newer stuff, so there's nothing wrong with it. And it is definitely a good base for modification. I know a lot of people have modified one of these and they still use them to this day, so there are those options there if you wish to go down that route. Like I mentioned, it is very, very plastic. You do need to keep in mind with this thing, let's turn my camera off. Uh-oh. Okay. Yeah. Just realised that my little close cam didn't work for that, so apologies on that. There's not really a huge amount on the close cam that you need to see on this to understand what's going on. It's fairly straightforward, so that's alright. Sorry about that. Can't believe I didn't realise. That's what happens when you're doing 3 blasters in one day. In 2 hours really. You tend to skip things, so slow on down. Now, this here is definitely going to have some stiff competition coming up because there is the LDT FN Scar, which is very metal, very bulky, and very expensive. This is by no means a comparison to that, so don't try to compare the two. They're completely different. The reason you would buy this one to me is because it is relatively cheap, so it's a budget gun to get into. Sorry, blaster. It's somewhat easy to modify, although I have heard from a few people that the screws on these tend to tear out the threads because it is only plastic molding, so just be mindful of that. But it is by no means a bad decision. Like, it can easily do well. Like I mentioned with the extended barrel, I'll just pull that off now. You don't need that for the rest of the review. So that there does nothing, it's purely for looks. It is a plastic barrel and it ends just there right at the edge. So I know a lot of people who just don't even run the extended barrel because it doesn't really serve a purpose, and it just in some cases looks dicky. I'd prefer to run the shorter barrel, but I do prefer more compact blasters, so that's just me. Anyway, enough of me talking about this thing. We'll jump outside. Sorry, we'll do the chrono test, then we'll jump outside and do the accuracy test and get into the final thoughts. Rightio, Scar V2, chrono test. This long outer barrel is annoying, but not really going to make any difference. So that's pretty good. That's a fairly consistent 260, surprisingly consistent. Now this one, when it came out, always had a reputation for being pretty up there in power output. I didn't realise it was going that good. So there you go. By no means, even for its age, it's by no means a slacker. Rounds per minute, 690, 7.4 volt battery on the same motors as IQ Gen 8s and whatnot use, so that's not a surprise at all. It'll do the job. I could see why some people would want to increase it, although personally I don't think it's necessary, but I'm like that about everything. So sit outside, check out the accuracy. So my thoughts on the Scar V2 is, it is definitely competitive. It's by no means a bad choice. Its power output for its age and its capability seems pretty good. And the reliability on them seems okay. They don't seem to have a reputation for breaking from what I'm aware of. Like I said, I never actually had one myself, but I do know a few people, and we used to play with quite a bit, who did, and they were using them the whole time. Some with modifications, and like anything, when they started modifying it, tended to start playing up. But that's nothing unusual. Any person who deals with cars would be able to tell you that. Anyway, the reality of it is, if you bought this, it probably wouldn't disappoint you. Is it as good as, do I think it's as good as a JM ACR? No. I definitely believe that a JM ACR is a better option. However, I do also understand it is a more expensive option. So there is that to take into account. The body is very plastic. It is disappointing, but considering this is one of the first major big blasters that got out there and performed really well, you got to expect that for the time. So it is what it is. It hasn't seen any updates, and the fact they're still selling it is just an indicator of how decent they are for what they are. By no means a bad choice. Recommended accessories, standard thing, couple of mags, maybe 2 extras. That way you're never going to run out. I don't think an 11 volt battery is worthwhile. An alloy barrel and with a hop up would be nice. However, that depends on your typical engagement range. If you're doing close quarter stuff, say like some of the places down in the southeast corner, you don't even need that. If you're doing anything even semi-open, like what we do up here in central Queensland, you need a hop up. That's realistically almost every blaster needs one. So those are my thoughts on that. Let me know what you think down below. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. If you ever had one, if what you did to it, let me know. I'd be curious to see if it turned out well for you. Maybe you still got it and you still use it. Tell us all about it. I'm very curious to hear how many people still have their original Scars, because I definitely believe there are still quite a few. But that's all from me for this one today. And with that, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, all that wonderful good stuff, especially if you like the channel. Sharing and liking, subscribing, it all helps out really, really greatly. I am looking at potentially, as a suggestion that someone had in my previous channel chat video, maybe doing a stream once every, it'd probably be 2 weeks initially, but maybe every week, depending on how, whether the reception from people is, if it's positive enough, and also if I'm enjoying it and getting value out of it, such as, you know, it's actually worthwhile putting the effort in. I did used to stream video games, so it wouldn't really take me much to set one up. It wouldn't be like this setup. It'd probably initially be video games while I'm talking and answering questions and whatnot. But let me know if you're interested in that in the comments down below. I'm definitely going to look at doing it. So yeah, there is that. If you'd like to support the channel, links to PayPal and Buy Me a Coffee down below, all donations, 100% optional, never going to hide anything behind a paywall. Wonderful sponsors up here. I have had to add Big Dan, because Big Dan has done an absolutely awesome job fixing a bunch of my blasters, and in a lot of cases, he's done it for free. So yeah, he definitely deserves to be up there. He's been a great help with that. So yeah, without further ado, I'll catch us next time. Nah, I don't want one.
Won't cause a scene or stir up no clash on second thought. Then it's by fourth. She's on the job, but she's